Is your team not performing well? Is morale low and turnover high? Are you falling further behind the competition? I'm here to help. I'm your host, Shani, and this is the Leadership Show, where business strategy and culture finally meet, and we make the long-awaited shift from rhetoric to results. I promise I'm not your typical boring leadership consultant, and I will help you get your shift together. Let's do this.
Hello, Leadershifters, and welcome to another episode of the Leadershifter Show with Shani. My guest today is the lovely Megan Galloway. She joins us from Kansas City, which has been a city in the forefront of my mind for the past few years because I love Patrick Mahomes, the quarterback for the Kansas City Chiefs. I think he is so talented and poised and adorable, of course. And so I've been rooting for them, and I was so bummed they lost in the playoffs.
But it was a heartbreaker.
Yes. But moving on to leadership topics, Megan is joining us today to share her inspiring story about some of the shifts she's made in just the past couple of years, migrating from a variety of corporate jobs to her own consulting company and then quickly pivoting to something else opportunistically. So there's a lot of great messaging and learning in that for a lot of different people, because I think that in this day and age, people don't want to be stuck. They don't want to be dissatisfied, and they want to work with people and at companies that align with their mission and values, which is exactly what Megan was telling me pre-show. So Megan, welcome to the Leadership Show.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here with you.
Fantastic. So actually, why don't we start with that story? Tell us about your career progression and how you came up in the learning and development, training and development field, and then sort of end where you decided to leave and how you process that.
Yeah, thank you for that. So I've spent the last 10 years of my career building learning and development programs for companies that have never had them before. I kind of fell into it through HR, like a lot of learning and development people kind of do.
Sure.
And it has been a wonderful experience of working with companies that knew that they wanted to provide some sort of learning and development for their teams, but didn't know where to start. So I've worked at 3 different companies building award-winning programs for them from the ground up, which has been a phenomenal experience. This last time around, I found myself in a situation where I was building a program, and the fulfillment that I was searching for in that and the alignment with that wonderful company just wasn't there at that time period. And I found myself in a position where I was thinking, like, what comes next? I've logically followed this like career progression that makes sense when you look at it on paper, and I've done all of the next things to get to the next role, whatever that is.
Right.
And it just didn't feel like that was what was next for me. I don't know particularly why, but I thought that doing that again at another company wasn't exactly what I wanted to do. So I did a lot of soul searching about why. And I kind of came to this realization that I wanted to have a bigger impact. I wanted to change the way that companies were doing learning and development, but I wanted to do it faster than just one company at a time. So took a huge leap and decided to start my own business, and it's opened so many doors for me.
Terrific. Well, I love the fact that you are among the group of us who want to rewrite the playbook, reference back to football.
Yes.
On learning and development, because the traditional way it's been conducted is broken. People now, by and large, don't want to be preached to and just taught, and it's challenging to go through all the online learning modules. It's, they can be boring. And just carving out the time to do it sometimes you don't have the discipline to do it, or you might do the first 2 modules and then never get back to the rest of them, which defeats the purpose of that method of delivery. So tell me about, what it was in the mainstream and stuff that companies you had worked with or worked for had been doing that you wanted to try and change in your effort to go broader.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think a lot of it is that I agree with you that a lot of the way that companies traditionally are approaching learning and development is a little bit broken, especially because the demographic of who we're catering to from who our customers are internally is changing so rapidly as well. Like as new generations enter the workforce, they have different motivators, different drivers, different ways of learning. And so from my seat right now, I'm really looking at it and thinking people want to be more connected than ever. We are 2 years into a pandemic that has driven a lot of disconnection. We're also looking at this place where people want to have things that are more experiential based. They want to learn through experiences versus learning through someone telling them what to do. We, especially millennial generation and the generations that are following, we want to have more empowerment and ownership over our own development. And so companies that are finding ways to drive that through real meaningful experiences, I think are the ones that are going to be continuing to find ways to retain their teams better than ever.
Right. I couldn't agree more with that. And, as people in this field, I'm sure the learning pyramid also, and I'm not going to get these numbers exactly right, but order of magnitude, they'll be close. At the point of the learning pyramid is listening, and it's people only retain like some minute percentage of that. And then the next is like reading it, which is slightly higher. And then the next place is listening and reading, and, nothing really impactful until you get to the bottom of the period. God, I keep saying pyramid, where it's about experience and teaching others. That's what really cements the learning. And I agree that is where we need to go, in addition to the knowledge sharing, which is part of the experiential mode as well.
Yeah, I agree. Like really making those connections. And when you teach someone something from your experience, I think that's like that magic piece where you get the most retention, and it also builds connections. So it's forming these relationships within your company and for those people in their careers that's really meaningful to them. And so they want to keep doing it. It's something that's exciting for them. It's not something that's like a check the box the way that some people see traditional learning.
Oh, absolutely. And leadership, there's just as an aside related to this, it is the connection and the relationship that people have with coworkers that makes them more loyal, makes them want to stay. And even if they get an offer from another company that might be a little more money, a lot of times they don't want to give up the network that they have at the existing employer, because it gives them such comfort, and they feel at home and they feel belonging. And it's just, we can't overemphasize how important that is. And you're not going to foster that with, sort of traditional lame training.
Agree 100%.
Okay, so let's continue with your shift story. So you decided you wanted to do something more fulfilling and with greater impact. So you started your own consulting business. I love the name of it, Everleader. And that got some momentum pretty quickly, but then there was another shift. So tell us about that and how that came about and what you're currently doing post that third shift.
Yes, lots of changes going on around here. Definitely. So I started Everleader, and with the goal of changing the workforce through better leaders, better managers, so that current and future generations, I have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. So I just want the workplace to look so much more human and real and connected by the time that they get into the workplace than it is right now. And so that was my overall goal and mission with Everleader, and to really help equip leaders and managers with those tools. And pretty quickly, I felt like the more that I put myself out there on social media and through connections that I was making, and really was being authentic in my goals and my values, the more I was attracting different types of people than I've ever had before, and finding all these allies and things and that have similar thoughts and values and missions, et cetera. So one of those was Campfire. So I met the CEO of Campfire. His name is Steve Arntz. And even in our first conversation, it was like an immediate connection of, wow, you are doing something that is so aligned with what I'm trying to do, and whatever I can do to support you, like I'm here for it. And we've, I think, felt that very mutually. And so I started working with Campfire in a contract kind of based environment to help with some of their, they do manager training through cohort based learning experiences. So I was facilitating those. I was helping with some of the content for those based in my L&D experience. And slowly over time, over the last several months, it just kind of felt like our worlds were colliding even closer together. And we reached a point where we decided we have such similar values and missions and goals that it makes sense for me to join them full time, so that I can have greater impact sooner in this goal that I feel. So it's just been absolutely wonderful. And I started there for the first time last week. I went to Salt Lake, got to meet the team in person for the first time. It was like, there's no other way that I could describe it except for just like this incredible magical experience of being around people that are so aligned in so many different ways. And even in the places that we aren't, like, they're just so real and human with each other and with me, that I feel just like this overwhelming sense of belonging with them. And it's just like, it feels like coming home for the first time in a really long time in my work life. So it's just really exciting.
I love it. Coming home. Not a lot of people get to say that about their jobs. So how did you meet the CEO? Let's talk about the networking approach you took, because I know that's a challenge for people who are trying to pivot in their careers.
Yeah, LinkedIn is an incredible tool. I think that's the main way that I met the CEO. Is one of my friends here in Kansas City had experienced a Campfire. She had gone and had tried it out in one of their free test sessions. And I had noticed that she had liked something on LinkedIn that the CEO had posted. So I asked her about it and was like, what is this? This looks so interesting. And so I just reached out that way and said, I love what you're doing. I would love to talk with you and just network and understand how I can help you. I'd love to help in your mission. It's so closely aligned. And so I would just like highly encourage people that are wanting to make a change to just get out there. And you don't even have to post anything, just comment on other people's things, engage and network, and put yourself out there. And I'd say, like, one of the interesting things since I've been more active on LinkedIn the last few months that I've kind of just been realizing is that we're all more connected than we think we are because of the amazing technology that exists out there to do that. And then B, like, everyone is just humans alongside of us. Like, we're all in this journey together. We're all just doing the best we can to be good people, wanting to make good work. And so connecting with other people seems a lot less intimidating when you just think about it in that like human to human connection. And so that's been something that's really opened my eyes into just meeting people from all over the world over the last few months through LinkedIn and having incredible conversations with people.
Good for you. And what specifically did you say when you reached out to him with essentially a cold, direct message, right?
Yeah. Honestly, I just offered help. I not for the intentions of getting a job or getting paid or anything like that. It was just this feeling of like, I want to be helpful to people. That's kind of my approach in general. Like, when I connect with people, is what can I do to be most helpful to you? And so my genuine intention is not to create something out of that. It's more to like create something for the person that I'm being with. And I find that like a lot of the time when you put yourself out there in that way and you give to other people in that way, then the right things kind of come back to you in the ways that you need them to. So that was my message, I think, to him, was something to the extent of like, I love what you're doing. I would love to help you in any way I can. And I would just love to share some things with you that some thoughts that I have or some resources that I have based on what I'm seeing that you're doing at Campfire.
I love it. It really brings up, it's a cliche, but it's true. Nothing ventured, nothing gained, right?
Yeah.
If you hadn't have had the courage, for lack of a better word, to reach out to him, you wouldn't be where you are today. And worst case scenario, he didn't answer you, right? It's
Right.
like, okay, right? The ice caps aren't melting, and like things, the world isn't turning upside down if he doesn't answer you. It just is what it is. But because you reached out with a generous offer, he did answer you, and look at what happened. So the message there that I want to make sure people are getting loud and clear is, don't be afraid to reach out. Like, people are human, and sure, it's a numbers game, and sometimes you got to contact a lot of people before someone will respond back, or you'll click and have chemistry with someone in order to co-create. But why not just go for it when you find people who are playing in the same sandbox and have alignment in their mission? So thank you for that inspiring story and for describing your process in LinkedIn, because I do think a lot of people underutilize LinkedIn. It is a great tool. So
yeah,
Microsoft, you can pay me later for that plug.
I love that.
Tell us a little bit more about Campfire and their approach and the impact that learning in the experiential way has on Campfire clients.
Yeah, that's really what drew me into Campfire, was their approach, and the way that they're doing it is exactly what I believe is the absolute best method for helping managers learn. So Campfires are guided, facilitated sessions for your company. So it's a phenomenal way for managers to learn from each other in that instance, to really be able to just grow in not only their own approach and what they're doing, but also how the company does it as a whole. So as an example, like feedback, one of our sessions is called the feedback habit. And what I love about it is when we get people in the room, your managers in a room together, we talk about feedback. We talk about through guided content that I'd say about 80% of it is based in managers just talking with each other and doing that peer learning model. And so we pose questions and thoughts and ideas around, what does feedback mean at our company? And what are the best ways that managers can do that here? And here are some tools. We like to call them magic wands. It's like something that you can take away directly from the session and use that day with somebody on your team. And so that's what I love about it, is it creates these opportunities for managers to really talk with each other about what they're doing, what their challenges are, what their wins are, what the best methods are to do that. And so as a result, I think what happens for our customers is that they see that their managers are so much more aligned. The employee experience becomes so much greater because it's consistent. People know what to expect when they have conversations with their managers or have situations that come up, and they know that they are going to get some sort of a consistent response because all of the managers are aligned. So as a result, like, retention goes up in that aspect. People like working for people that they like working for, like that's the finding a manager that really sees you, that can really work with you as a human to help you grow. That's something that's invaluable to companies right now, especially in such a time period as the Great Resignation. So that's what that looks like. It's really amazing and innovative. And I think that method of group-based peer learning is the most successful thing that companies could do right now.
Absolutely. And I appreciate you giving feedback as an example of one of the sessions, because that is a particular passion of mine. I talk about it all the time. I train on it. I keynote it. I did a course on it online, the whole nine. And in the spirit of sharing my magic wand on feedback, if it's something you and Campfire are interested in, I would be happy to share a super simple feedback model that works for positive feedback, constructive feedback easy to remember and makes feedback both more palatable to deliver, because as people a lot of times shy away from giving feedback because it's awkward and I don't want to hurt someone's feelings, and we'll just let it go. It's hard for me, right? So it becomes a selfish thing. I don't want to be uncomfortable, so I'm not going to give feedback. And it also becomes a real positive way to receive feedback. It's called the SIP model, and it's a wine analogy, which also makes it super fun. So if not a magic wand, a magic wine glass.
And there you go. That's equally as effective, I would imagine. That's amazing.
Yeah, I love that. And the other thing I'd say about feedback, which I'm sure you agree with, is I view it as a currency because it is a store of value. So like time and money, when we're sharing feedback, we're creating value for the individual who's receiving it, for the team that they're on, and for the organization that they're in. And so not giving feedback is like not wanting to consider a new client base to raise your revenue, or consider an obvious way to cut costs. It's like stepping over money.
Yes, I agree. And that's one of the things that we talk about in this session as well, is clear is kind. Like giving that feedback is actually the most kind thing that you can do. I think people are really fearful of giving feedback because they don't want to come across as being critical of someone or hurting someone's feelings, especially if they really care about them as a person. Mm-hmm. And I think that being able to really deliver feedback in a super consistent and regular way, it makes it a lot less intimidating for both people to give and receive feedback, both ways, for the employee to be giving it to their manager and the manager to be giving it to the employee, just really opening up those doors to keeping that becoming a regular part of their conversations to make it just a more clear and kind environment.
Right. I also have to say, I love the name Campfire. It feels warm and cozy, and just like sitting around a circle telling stories and roasting marshmallows. Like it gives me the warm fuzzies even to think about being with an organization called Campfire.
That's exactly, you're hitting it spot on. That's exactly what the feeling is like, particularly like, so I still guide some of our sessions, which is one of my absolute favorite things to do, is to sit in with these managers and watch their growth with each other. Like, it's just, I walk away from every session feeling so energized. And I always think about that, like immediately as we walk in to the Zoom room, is I want people to immediately have that feeling of warmth and safety and sharing and learning. And people do, they really lean into that. And it's that feeling of like when you're sitting in the mountains around a campfire, you're sharing with each other, you're, roasting s'mores, marshmallows for s'mores. And you're just having that, like that time of connection and really, really intentional growth and learning from each other. And that's exactly what it feels like. And it really is magical. It's something that I genuinely enjoy every single one that I do, because it's such a special environment.
Mm-hmm. And what type of client does Campfire target? Is there a specific niche that you tend to go after, so that anyone who's listening can be like, oh, that's exactly who we are, and let me get in contact?
Yeah, that's a great question. So generally, we're targeting companies that are in growth mode, and maybe they have somewhere between 50 and 500 employees, and they don't have a lot of internal resources to build learning and development in-house, but they know that they want to get something like this for their employees. So one of the favorite things that I love about Campfire is it literally takes 5 minutes for someone to set up internally on their team. We connect really quickly. We do all the management of people's calendars and all of those things through our software. So it's really easy for people to implement. So we're really targeting those companies that we want to make manager training more accessible to everyone. And so it's really about those people that don't have a lot of in-house L&D resources, but they're really looking for a program that can be super effective and help everyone stay connected and growing.
Okay. So it sounds a little bit like outsourced L&D done better than they could have done on their own.
Yes, exactly. I mean, that's part of, I mean, I've spent 10 years building learning and development programs in-house. And I genuinely believe that I would have picked up Campfire and said, this is better than I could have built it in-house. Because the beauty of having these peer-based conversations is that it's immediately applicable to your managers. They're talking about the things that are most important to them at the time. And we've seen even like like if there's a group of executives going through a campfire, their conversation is going to look completely different than first time managers who are having a completely different type of a conversation. So it really it's so quickly customizable for your company just through the nature of how we're the learning is developed and delivered. So that part of it is I think really successful.
Let me ask you, in addition to doing these in-house for a company, do you also collect groups of people from different companies to do a campfire if either there's not enough people at a company to do it, or just for the cross-pollination of learning from different cultures of different companies, maybe in different industries, etc.?
Yeah, you're exactly right. So we have both. We have some that are internal to the company. So like one of our customers might have one internal campfire a month as a best practice. And then in addition, the rest of our library of campfires opens up to their team members. So they can then go in and select a different campfire that's maybe a cross cohort, cross company cohort experience. They can meet people from other companies. And we have a new series that's just launching that's called Manager Essentials. So it's for those managers that are just getting started in their career as a manager, 0 to 3 years of experience as a manager. And that's a cross company experience. So they're meeting from other managers from other companies that are going through similar things than what they're as what they're going through. So there's both opportunities available to our customers, and they each bring their own kind of value. Like the internal ones are really great for building that internal community and culture and connection and that language around leadership. And then the external ones give that amazing perspective, because sometimes like a manager may have worked for a company for 15 years, and it's really easy to get stuck in our bubble of like what we think leadership should be when we've been in the same culture for that long. So it's a great way to kind of open up those perspectives and get networking and all that as well.
Right. Less myopic when you start sharing, and some industries are more advanced than others in adapting to, the VUCA world, volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous, and they can help other companies along. So I love the cross-company idea as well. Excuse me. So any last thoughts for the Leadership audience before we wrap up?
I would just say that, kind of to touch on something that you said earlier, the last 6 months of my life have been really interesting. And if you would have asked me 6 months ago if this is what I was going to be doing, sitting with you this morning, having this conversation, I wouldn't have believed myself, honestly. So I feel like the biggest message that I would just give to people that are listening is just go for the things that feel like they're right for you, and don't be afraid to put yourself out there and be authentic and to make connections with people, because I think that that's just really what this is all about, is finding the people that can really help us be the best versions of ourselves. And sometimes that looks like something different inside of the company you're already with. Sometimes it looks like growing in the role that you're already in. Sometimes it looks like moving on to something different or being brave and starting your own thing. Like everybody's journey is so different, but just being brave enough to try and to branch out there, like it's so scary, but I'm so relieved in a way that I did it, because now I don't have to guess like what if I did it. I actually I did, but it was scary. It was scary in the minute, but now on the other
I think
side
I might title this podcast "Making It Happen with Megan."
I love that. Ooh, I love the alliteration too. That's
huge alliteration fan. Well, thank you for joining us. Last question before I do the wrap up: how can people reach you and or Campfire?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn, so you can search for me, Megan Galloway, on LinkedIn. Of
course you are.
Yes, I would love to connect with anybody there. And then in addition, you can find more information about Campfire at getcampfire.com. That's our handle.
Getcampfire.com.
Yes.
Love it, because campfire.com was probably unavailable
It's a popular name, but we believe that we're redefining campfires in the way that you think of them right now. So hopefully we keep shifting that for a lot of people.
Terrific. Well, thank you. And thank you, leadershifters, for joining us today. Just a couple of the big takeaways from the conversation today for me is like, don't accept the status quo for yourself or your organization. Just because we were taught to do something a certain way, or just because something is within our comfort zone, screw that. Like, don't get stuck in that inertia. Do something, make it happen like Megan did. Reach out to people who you don't know. You might just be surprised at what transpires from that. Take personal risks in your career. And if you are at a company that doesn't have L&D, think about outsourcing it. If you are a company that is big and well established and you have, an internal L&D department and you're still doing things the old-fashioned way, take some cues from our discussion today and shake it up. The experiential learning is, it's absolutely the best way for adults to learn. Kids too, quite frankly. But we're swimming in the adult pool on the Leadershifter show. So Megan, thank you for sharing your wisdom and your inspiring story. It was great to have you on the show.
Thank you so much. It was great being here.
Okay. And Leadershifters, until next time.